So earlier, I was talking about Genesis chapter 4 and talking about Adam and Eve. They had Cain and Abel. Cain got jealous of Abel, took his life. Later in chapter 4, it talks about how, God was holding Cain accountable for the death of his brother. And then later on, it talks about how Cain then had a child with his wife. The question is, where did the wife come from, right? Then two other, I guess, children were conceived or whatever, but then they had children with two other women, and I'm just like, where did these other women come from, right? And people can argue, theologians and historians can argue, well, Adam and Eve had other children. So if that's the argument you want to stand on, let's look at that. So in chapter 4, verse 25, it says, Adam made love to his wife again, and she gave birth to a son and named him Seth, saying, God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him. So only after Cain took Abel, then, later on, after, according to the scriptures, there were other relationships that was not Adam and Eve, was not Cain, right, and his wife, but other relationships. But how do those relationships come to pass when, according to verse 25, Adam and Eve then conceived Seth to replace the void, to fill the gap of Abel not being there? Okay, because in chapter 5, Genesis chapter 5, it talks about the lineage of Adam's family. And in verse 4, it says, after Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. Remember, it's making a point to say only after Seth was born that he had other children. So yeah. So how do you have, the argument would have been, oh, well, they had children, and then those children had babies, and you have nieces and siblings and all that stuff. I was like, except for in verse 25 of chapter 4, it clearly says that they made Seth to be Cain's sibling. This is an interesting question.